Welcome everyone. I'm sometimes asked, Dan, how did you get involved in lighthouse preservation? And it was by accident largely. I grew up in Jacksonville, and I remember when I was in elementary school, the school bus would take us to the Marine Science Center in Mayport, which is the old Mayport Elementary School. And even in the 60s, it was no longer an elementary school, it was a Marine Science Center. We went there and learned about the ocean, and the lighthouse is 2 blocks from it. I remember seeing it out the window of the school bus, and that's one of my first memories of the lighthouse. And of course, as a child, my family took us to St. Augustine, and we climbed the St. Augustine Lighthouse. Most people are familiar with it. It's so wonderfully restored. But as Isabel said, I lived in Pensacola for 5 years, and there's a wonderful lighthouse there. It's on the Navy base, much like the one at Mayport is on a Navy base, and that presents its challenges because not everybody can just walk onto a Navy base and go climb the lighthouse. They've done some really good work at Pensacola. They've sectioned it off from the rest of the base, and you come in through a different gate. So they've got that. They've got a wonderful lighthouse association out there. That lighthouse is completely restored. It's the tallest lighthouse in Florida. It's not the top, it's not the highest from the ground. The highest one is Ponce Inlet Lighthouse, which if you haven't been to it, you should go see it too. And it's higher because it's on higher ground. But I've already mentioned St. Augustine, Pensacola, Ponce. If you haven't seen lighthouses in Florida, I really recommend that you get started doing it. But then after Pensacola, I moved my family to Tampa, and I've always had a boat, and I took my children out on a boat. They were small at the time, and we lived on the coast off near Tampa between Tarpon Springs and Clearwater, a little area called Palm Harbor. And we took the boat out from Palm Harbor, and we looked, and we were like, is that a lighthouse out there? And it turned out it was. We headed towards it, and we got there and pulled our boat up on the sand and walked up and found a lighthouse that was completely abandoned. And you could see they had put a fence around it, and people had cut the fence, and they had even welded the door shut. Someone had come out with a acetylene torch and cut the door up. So it was open, and everyone went out there and just climbed to the top and make pictures. And about the third or fourth time I was out there, there was a group of lighthouse enthusiasts out there handing out membership applications. Come join us, because they wanted to restore that lighthouse and make it something that the public could enjoy. Because these lighthouses belong to all of us. They're built by our government, but they're not really needed anymore. In the days of GPS, lighthouses they're helpful to some, but they're not as essential as they once were. So I got together with those people at it's called the Anclote Key Lighthouse. It's off of Tarpon Springs. And we started raising money, and we raised a bunch of money. We even had some local musicians that were famous and put on concerts and stuff. And we got some money from various sources, grant money, state money, and we had that lighthouse restored. And the state took it over. It's a state park now. You go visit it, and it's not open every day because there's no road to it. It's on a deserted island, off, a mile off the coast. But you can go there in your boat, and on Saturdays and Sundays they have it. The volunteers still run it. You go there on Saturday and Sunday, and you climb it. They don't charge. It's a state park, but they ask for donations, and they just did a second restoration on it. It's got a brand new paint job on it. I haven't been there, but it's really beautiful from what I can tell. But when I retired, I moved back to Jacksonville because I've got a 95-year-old mother to look after. And I came back here, and I'd been working with that lighthouse down there for years. And I didn't really have anything to do. I was retired, look out for Mom, but other than that, I didn't have a lot I was involved in. And I found some local lighthouse enthusiasts. Beverly Oates is one, and Eric Martin is one, and Valerie Bennett joined us later, and then Cindy Cox. We got together, and we just said, let's start advocating for this lighthouse, because the St. John's River Lighthouse has just been sitting there for years. So how many of you have been to the lighthouses in Florida? You've got a wonderful one here. It's only open on Saturdays. But there are 30 lighthouses remaining in Florida. And I mentioned Pensacola, and there's the Anclote Key Lighthouse where I volunteered at. Ponce Inlet's wonderful. Canaveral's on an Air Force base. And of course your Amelia Light here is here. And one thing I get questions about is I'll start talking about the Mayport Lighthouse and people say, I didn't know we had a lighthouse at Mayport. Not only do we have a lighthouse, we have two. So how did you come to have two lighthouses? Well, the Mayport Lighthouse was opened in 1859. I remember it because it's 100 years before I was born. And it operated for 70 years, and in 1929 they turned it off. And people are like, well, why in the world did they turn it off? Well, what happened is the St. Johns River, the sands were shifting sand. Even the mouth of the river tended to move. It was hard to, you needed a pilot to get a ship into Jacksonville. It was treacherous. So what the government did, they dredged the channel and they put jetties way out into the ocean. And when they put the jetties out into the ocean, the lighthouse was a long way from the mouth of the river, and it's not one of the taller lighthouses. It's only 81 feet. So being a long way from the actual mouth of the river, it just wasn't that effective anymore. So in 1929, they turned that light off and they put a light ship out 8 miles off the coast. And a light ship sat there until 1954. And in 1954, they built a new lighthouse. What we affectionately call the Mayport Lighthouse is technically the St. Johns River Lighthouse. In 1954, they built another one. It's on the ocean. If you go to Hanna Park and go all the way to the north end of Hanna Park and walk out on the beach, you can see the new lighthouse. That's actually the newest lighthouse in Florida. It's kind of Art Deco looking. It doesn't look like the classic lighthouse that we're used to. Here's our St. Johns River Lighthouse, the light ship. We checked into what happened to the light ship, and it ended up somewhere up north, and eventually I think it sunk, and they decided to scrap it. So it's not anywhere that anybody can restore it. There are others that are the same class that can be seen. And this is the new lighthouse. A lot of people know about that one, but very few people even know this one's there. And the Coast Guard still runs it. In fact, they have the house around it. They have it all decorated just like an officers club for the Coast Guard now. And the Florida Lighthouse Association had a meeting there that I attended last year, and we were supposed to climb this new one, but it was raining, and they said the steps were slick and they wouldn't let anybody climb it. So this is something like what this is what it looked like when it was built. You see, it had this building is actually attached to it. That's an oil room where they kept the oil. When all the early lighthouses were lit with whale oil, and then when petroleum caught on, they switched to kerosene, and they ran on kerosene. And then I believe about 1920 they switched to an electric light system in the St. Johns River Lighthouse. It has at the top, you call this the gallery or the lantern room, and they have a lens in there which they call a Fresnel lens. Fresnel is spelled Fresnel after Augustin Fresnel, who invented them in France. And if you see one of those up close, they are just a work of art. It's just glass, crystal, and what it takes is when you have a light bulb, light goes out in every direction. And it takes all the light that goes up and aims it that way, and all the light that goes, it directs all the light around the whole candle or light, and it directs it in one direction, and it's just a marvel of engineering. And this light had a third order lens on it when it was built. The Fresnel lenses, you talk about an order, a first order, usually first order through sixth order. And curiously, the sixth order is the smallest one. A sixth order lens is about like this. But a first order lens is about 9 feet tall, and it sits on a turntable that's about this tall. So when you walk up to one, it's like 12 feet tall. And if you go to the Ponce Inlet Lighthouse, which is at the south end of the Daytona Island, they have a very good museum there where they have all the various sizes of lenses on display. They even have a first order lens. It's on a turntable. It's turning, and you can just walk up to it and just see what a marvel of engineering it is. What happened to the third order lens and our light when they turned it off in 1929? We don't really know. It went somewhere else. It may have been put in another light somewhere. Could have been sold to another country for one of their lights. We just don't know. Could be in a warehouse somewhere, and everyone's forgot about it. We just don't know. If any of your Jimmy Buffett fans, Jimmy Buffett wrote a book called A Salty Piece of Land, and the hero in his book is a cowboy from out west that retired and moved to the islands in the Caribbean, and there was an abandoned lighthouse on that island, much like our abandoned lighthouse. But someone had taken the lens, and the whole book is about him scouring the earth, trying to find that lens and bring it back to us. So if you haven't read that and you like Jimmy Buffett, I've read it twice. I think it's a pretty good book.
Did he ever find the lens?
In the end, yes.
He did?
Yeah. I believe so.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've read it.
But we haven't.
So who is the Mayport Lighthouse Association? We're a 501c3 nonprofit listed with the Internal Revenue Service, and we also have to register every year with the state of Florida Department of Agriculture for solicitation of contributions so that people can donate money to us. The Mayport Lighthouse Association was started back in the 90s. There was a gentleman who was very active in lighthouse preservation, Gene Oakes, that he was one of the founders of the Florida Lighthouse Association, who I'll tell you a little more about in a little bit. But he lived in Jacksonville, and he got a group together, and they started advocating for the St. John's River Lighthouse back in the 90s. And there was even a study on it back then on how much it would cost to move it. But Gene passed away, and the association fell apart, and really it just sat there inactive for many years. And then I moved back to Jacksonville and got to talking with Beverly Oakes, who happens to be Gene Oakes' his widow, and she still had all of Gene's paperwork about the St. John's River Lighthouse. And we got together with Eric, who's done a lot of work with various lighthouses around the state. We said, let's put this thing back together. So we filed with the Internal Revenue Service and got our 501c3 back. We filed with the state of Florida, set up a website, set up a Facebook, and we started going out talking to people and trying to get people involved. At first, the Navy, we approached the Navy and said, we'd like to see what we could do to restore the light. And they said, well, get me a proposition on someone to come do an estimate on it. So we found a guy that would do an estimate on it, and we contacted them back and said, we got a guy that'll do the estimate. And they said, we changed our mind. And what it is, lighthouses are not the Navy's business. They never were. It was the Lighthouse Service and the Coast Guard. The Navy they inherited the lighthouse, really. And they don't really want people tramping in and out of their base coming out to look at a lighthouse. They would have torn it down back in the 40s if they could have, likely. So what are our goals for the St. John's River Lighthouse? Save and restore the lighthouse. We already said the Navy's not going to let us restore it where it sits because they just don't want a bunch of trucks coming in and out on the base. It was restored back in it was restored in 1980. Some of us 1980 doesn't seem that long ago. Then you start counting up. Yeah, that was a long time ago. But you can tell it when you go look at it now. It looks like a painting, but it's actually a photograph. This is what it looks like today. You can see the rail around the edge, and you can guess what would happen if you leaned on that. And then for some reason they got the great idea. Apparently, someone had shot at it with a rifle and broke the glass, so they decided to put plexiglass in it. The plexiglass is all yellow now, and you can't see through it. And you can see the concrete's chipping, the iron is rusting, and it's It's just not in really great shape. We say the Navy's conducting demolition by neglect. And I understand why they feel that way. It's not really their business. It's more of a headache than anything for the Navy. You know, if we could restore it, we'd like to make it where the people could come see it. Because as I said, you know, these lighthouses belong to all of us. We'd like to have it where people can come, bring your children out and climb to the top. And we'd like to keep the lighthouse in Mayport Village. I understand there were some people that talked about commandeering the lighthouse from the Navy and putting it in a neighborhood out in the Atlantic Beach area. They were going to make it their own personal lighthouse. That didn't get very far. They probably found out how much it would cost to move it. So what do we do? Can't fix it on the base. So our idea, and most people that you talk to agree that's the only way it's ever going to work, is let's move it off of the Navy base. The city of Jacksonville owns property nearby, and actually the riverfront from where the lighthouse sits now is probably 500 yards, and you can see down Palmer Street. It looks like you can just pick it up and roll it down Palmer Street, but then when you start measuring and thinking about it, you realize that would flatten everyone's front yard, and you have to take out all the fences and smash everyone's septic tank and the water lines, and so you can't do that. But there's a spot nearby that we can move it to, and we work with the city of Jacksonville. Councilman Matt Carlucci on the Jacksonville City Council actually advocated for us. And we were talking to the Navy, will you let us move it? We can come up with a plan. They're stonewalling us. We come to the city of Jacksonville. You know, if we could move it to the waterfront, this city-owned property, would you support that? And we didn't ask, would you pay for it? They're like, because that's their first question. How much would it cost? At this point, nothing. We just want you to say, if you can move it, we're not opposed. So we got the okay from the city of Jacksonville, and we kept pushing with the Navy. And eventually we contacted our congressman, and our congressman contacted the head at the base and said, I want you to talk to these people. I see no reason why you can't let them move this lighthouse. If you think about how it is in the military.
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Who's your congressman?
Rutherford.
Okay.
Yeah. But in the Navy, or anywhere in the military, you don't volunteer for anything that you don't have to volunteer for, because if things go wrong, you get blamed for it. You know, if you step up and say, oh yeah, I'll let you move that lighthouse, and they get the lighthouse halfway out and it topples over and blocks the runway, and then they're going to, at the command, they're going to say, who okayed this? And somebody's career is ruined. So I don't blame them feeling the way they do. But when the congressman got behind them and said, I think you need to talk with these people about moving this lighthouse. Well, now they got an excuse. The congressman told me to. So that, you know, that's the way it works. I understand. Here we go. I probably should mention first about how the Mayport Naval Station got there. Historically, this whole area was a resort owned by a lady named Elizabeth Stark, and she called it the Wonderwood Resort. And where they have the ships now, what we used to call the carrier basin, because they used to have carriers there, that was a big harbor where they had fishing boats, and people would come ride down from the northeast. She was originally from New York. She came down with some money and built a resort there. And people came down from the northeast, and they had a golf course, and people would come down and they'd fish and play golf. And she had a freshwater lake. You could freshwater fish if you wanted. But then World War II broke out, and the Navy needed another base. When they bombed Pearl Harbor, we learned really quickly that you don't want to put all your planes in one place. Don't put your ships in one place. So they wanted more bases. And so the Navy commandeered this land from Mrs. Stark and closed the Wonderwood Resort. And I understand they paid her about $35,000 for that. And she ended up dying. She wasn't destitute, but she didn't have very much in the end. She's buried in a very modest grave right there in Middleburg. But that's how the base got here. It was built in 1942 at the height of World War II. So the fence of the naval station goes along here and like this. And this is Mayport Village. It's traditionally a fishing village. There's always been fishing boats and shrimp boats tied up along there, much like there is in Fernandina. But the lighthouse is here. And there's a runway right there. You can understand why the Navy didn't want it.
Lighthouse is where the A is.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
The
back.
lighthouse is here, the runway's over here. It's close.
Yes.
And it sits here, and this building right here has got satellite dishes and antennas hanging all off of it. And it's supposed to be some top secret communication thing. Even the few times we got permission to go out there with it, they send somebody with you. You can't just go out there to it. They got somebody watching you. You could drive up to the fence and park right here, pull off the road, and you can make a picture of it through the fence. If you stand there too long, the guys with the M16s come out and, what are you doing? Looking at the lighthouse. So it's not in a good place. The Navy doesn't want it there. So what we would like to do is move it over here. Right about there. There's the Mayport Ferry. This used to be Strickland Seafood Restaurant. It's recently purchased by the Jacksonville Transportation Authority. They're going to put a building there. This is Singleton Seafood Shack. And this is OSearch right here. You may have heard of them. They do a lot of research on sharks. And they have their big OSearch boat there. And they're going to build a big campus right here for all of their shark research. It's even going to have dormitories for students that are out there working with them. So, looks like you could just move this thing right down Palmer Street. No, you can't do that.
That's not it. It's south.
What's going to have to be done is it's going to go out. It's going to have to go out this way. They call this Patrol Road. And if you go out Patrol Road to the back of the base, then you can get on Ocean Street. Ocean Street is A1A Jimmy Buffett Boulevard, and then roll it right on down like this, past the ferry, past Singleton's, plant it right there.
Past Ocean.
You gotta go
What?
Further south.
Further south?
south of the
Oh,
green
right
bay,
there. I think we got a better picture as we go on. This is the fence. If you pull up there, they'll come out to the fence and like, what are you doing? But you can see that they've got equipment parked around there. It's a back gate construction entrance. They bring in tractor trailers and stuff all the time. Those supplies come through that back gate. So there's trucks rolling in and out, and they stop them and search them. And you can see there's equipment here. And it's in their way. This is where they inspect cars coming in the back. You see there's a ship way back in the background. And the control tower's here.
Where's the door?
It's when the Navy built this base, it was swamp. It was dunes and swamp, and you can't land airplanes on dunes and swamp. So they smoothed it out and filled it in. And the door of the lighthouse is 9 feet underground. So people want to know if you can climb it. Climb it. You can't even get in the door. What happens, there have been a few people that have had the privilege to climb it for various reasons, and the Florida Lighthouse Association had a meeting at Mayport back in, I think it was 2001, and they let people, they rolled up one of those rolling ladders like you have in Home Depot with the steps, and they let people climb up and look in the window. And there are some people who've actually been inside it. One of our members was fortunate enough to be able to get inside it and climb it some years back. But things are the security situation is much different with the Navy than it was. 9/11 happened and security got much tighter. And then at the Pensacola Naval Station, where there's also a lighthouse, when I lived in Pensacola, you could drive up to the front gate, show them your driver's license, and they'd wave you on in. You could go to the lighthouse and climb it. It was no big deal. But they had a terrorist shooting about 5 years ago. There was a pilot, a Middle Eastern pilot that was over in Pensacola training to fly, and he came in with a gun and shot the place up. So they don't just let anybody through the front gate anymore. And Mayport's no different. Mayport's even stricter than Pensacola, really. And it was restored back in 1980, and they put they smoothed it and fixed the bricks and put a coat of paint on it, but you can see what's going on with it. These old bricks from 1858 are poking through. This is where the oil room was attached to it. It's a roof like that. And it goes down 9 feet underground where the door to the oil room is. You can see how the plexiglass, I'm sure that seemed like a good idea back in 1980, but not so much now. You can see well enough that you can see the lens is no longer there. But this would have been a rail that the keeper could come out on the outside and stand inside this rail and clean the glass. But I think you agree that you wouldn't want to be leaving on that rail. And look how it's just what the salt there and age is just taking its toll on it. So what did we do? First thing we got to do, first we thought we wanted to get an appraisal to restore it, but then we found out the Navy was not going to let us restore it where it was sitting. So let's get an appraisal on what it'll take to move it. Well, no one does free estimates on moving lighthouses because there's a lot involved. You may remember that the biggest lighthouse move that's been done to my knowledge is the Cape Hatteras Lighthouse in North Carolina. They moved it, I think it was 1,200 feet, and they moved it in a straight line. They picked it up and put it up, they put railroad rails under it, and they had a hydraulic arm that pushed it. It would push it so far, and then they would move the hydraulic and push it a little more, and it just came out really, really slow, and they moved it 1,200 feet in a straight line. Ours can't go that way. There's not a straight line to put ours on, so we're going to have to put ours on wheels. And you got to know, will the road handle that weight? How many wheels do you have to put on it? You know, to understand it weighs, rough estimate is 1,000 tons. So you put 1,000 tons of bricks on wheels. How many wheels do you need, and will the road collapse? And to keep the road from collapsing, you probably got to put more wheels on it. And there's got to be boring samples along the way to see what kind of ground you're rolling it over. They've got to do a lot of surveying in the spot where we're planning to put it to see what would it take to upgrade that spot so that they'll carry that way. It's right by the river, so you think it's shifting sand, it'll probably fall over. Yeah, but Miami Beach is too, and they got 80-story condos sitting on it. You can do it. It's just how much money is it going to cost? So, the rough estimate we first got was $90,000 just to do an estimate on what it'll take to dig it up, put it on wheels, move it, build a new foundation, and put it on the new foundation. That's not to move it. That's just to give us an estimate on how do you move it, and hopefully what's it going to cost to move it. So we went to the Florida Lighthouse Association. And I started out, I told you there are 30 lighthouses remaining in Florida. Most of those lighthouses have a local friends group like us. Your Amelia Island Lighthouse has a museum and a group of friends that look out for it. Most of the lighthouses in Florida, not all of them, but most of them have a friends group. And the Florida Lighthouse Association gets money by, if you see someone who has a tag on the back of their car that says visit our lights, one of the specialty tags, every time someone puts one of those on their car, the Florida Lighthouse Association gets $25. And it comes to a pretty sizable sum of money. And the Florida Lighthouse Association gives away, I think they've given away about $250,000 already this year. So it's a good bit of money, and there's no administration. Every bit of it goes to bricks and mortar, keeping lighthouses maintained. So we approached them and asked for a grant, and they agreed and gave us a $75,000 grant. We also approached the United States Lighthouse Society. The United States Lighthouse Society, as you might expect, it covers the whole country, and they don't give out grants of the magnitude that Florida Lighthouse Association does, but they advocate for you, and they do have some grants that they give out. And we applied for their maximum grant, which is $10,000, and we were fortunate to get that too. And along the way, the United States Lighthouse Association made us an affiliate, one of their affiliate partners. So we're an affiliate of the United States Lighthouse Society, and that gives us a lot of, there's a lot of expertise that we can call on. Like, they're familiar with the lighthouses that have been moved, like the Carabel Lighthouse out in the Panhandle. It's a metal lighthouse that you can see it encroached in so close that it was going to fall over. So they picked it up and moved it. It's a metal skeleton though, so it's a lot easier than moving a brick one. FLA helped a lot with that. And it's the Fort George Island Lighthouse. The sea encroached on it. It's a brick lighthouse, and it absolutely fell over. And the Florida Lighthouse Association and U.S. Lighthouse Society were very helpful with them. So we get money from FLA and USLS, and we get expertise. We put out for proposals, for contracts, for bids to do a study to find out what it'll take to move our lighthouse. And the United States Lighthouse Society has experts on hand that have been involved with moves with lighthouses all over the country. And they were really good about reviewing our paperwork and say, no, you need to tell them you want this. And they really coached us through it, because we're just a bunch of amateurs. We would have been lost without somebody who's been through this before.
Come on now.
So we eventually came down to, we have several groups. One is Michael Blake Architects, and you say architect and people think, oh, the guys that design houses. No, not necessarily. There are a lot of architects that are in historic restoration, and that's their thing. And that's what Michael Blake does. They mainly do historic restoration. And when you talk about historic restoration, you can't just take an old building and slap a new coat of paint on it. Everything has to be historically accurate, especially if you're on the National Registry of Historic Places. It's got to be done historically accurate, or they'll take you off of the National Registry. So Michael Blake has some expertise in that. We got a team of structural, civil, and geotechnical engineers. They're going to come out with boring trucks and bore 75 feet down in the ground around where the lighthouse is now. They're going to go all along the travel route, and then they're going to go to the place where we're hoping to put it, and they're going to do a survey on that. We also have a moving contract consultant, ICC Commonwealth. IOC was the original International Chimney Company, and they started out back in the days when factories had big smokestacks, and they did smokestacks, but they branched out into lighthouses, and they're actually the company that moved the Cape Hatteras Lighthouse. And that, even though they moved it in a straight line, it's 3 times as big as our lighthouse, and they did a very successful move on it. So we're contracting with these, and it was confusing having all these different partners. So Michael Blake is local, and we kind of approached him and said, we'd like for you to kind of take charge of the whole thing and have them report to you, rather than having all these different organizations reporting to a bunch of novices like us. So that's where we are. And the feasibility study it's coming soon. We can't tell you when it is, because the Navy doesn't want it. They don't want the press standing out the gate making pictures of them do it, and them out there boring holes in the ground. But there's going to be a store. They're going to do on-site survey coming up very soon, and probably getting a report together. And sometime in August, we hope to have a report on, can you move this lighthouse? How do you move this lighthouse? And what's it going to cost to move this lighthouse?
as part of that assessment, are they gonna, is the base gonna let them, you know, it's an old structure, they need to make sure it's capable of being moved. So are they gonna allow them access to the actual lighthouse so they can?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. You would not believe the paperwork that's got to be gone through to get these guys on the base. I mean, we had them all do a hold harmless agreement. It took months for them to give us the hold harmless. I'm like, I bet you they're gonna give us one of this boilerplates, the same one they've been using for 40 years. But it took months for them to just give it to us, like, give it to us, we'll sign it.
Are they gonna let them inside to?
Yeah,
start?
yeah,
So they take
there's
our
a
pictures.
lot, when you get around to moving it,
Yeah.
they got to have sensors on the structure radially around it to be sure it's not buckling at the top so it doesn't sway. The guy from ICC Commonwealth told me how many sensors they put on the Cape Hatteras Lighthouse when they moved it. It was over 100. They had sensors all over it. And they're monitoring the wind speed. When you got something that's tall like that, wind speed could be an issue. So yeah, that's all involved. And this is Captain Brian Bender. He is the head guy of Naval Station Mayport. And it took us a long time for us to get through to him, but once we finally got our congressman involved, and our congressman suggested that he probably should talk to us. Actually, Congressman Rutherford, he's fairly good friends with Captain Bender, and we finally met Captain Bender. He's a heck of a guy. He really wants what's best for us and what's best for the community. They really understand that they're a part of the community, and the lighthouse is part of the community, and they want to be good neighbors. Captain Bender, however, is moving. That's what the Navy does. They send a commander in and they command 4 or 5 years at the most, and then they send them somewhere else. So he's going to Naval Station Jacksonville, and a new guy's coming in. So we went out and met with Captain Bender 3 weeks ago, and it kind of just, he's going away. So we have these commemorative coins that I'm going to tell you about in a little bit, and we gave him one of our commemorative coins. Those challenge coins are a big thing in the military. Somebody that's in the military or retired, they've usually got a wall somewhere that got all their challenge coins on. Every squadron they were in, had one, and places they hung out gave them one. So he was very appreciative of our challenge coin, and we gave him a letter he could put up on his wall in his new office at Naval Station Jacksonville. And I mentioned that we worked with the city councilman, Nat Carlucci, about getting an approval from the city, like we support you doing this. Like, we're not going to fund it, but we support this. And he put together a resolution for the city council, for the Jacksonville City Council, and they brought it up for a vote. It came up for a vote. We all attended the vote at City Hall, and you can see the City Council voted 18-0 that we support the Mayport Lighthouse Association looking into, can we move this lighthouse to city property. This is a little better shot of where we're going to move it to. The Mayport Ferry is just a little farther up this way. It's over here. This is Singleton's Seafood Shack, which very, very popular place to eat fried shrimp in Mayport. And you may wonder, how did the city come to own all this property anyway? It's like 7 acres. This is Safe Harbor Seafood. This is Singleton Seafood. And all this land in between, the city of Jacksonville owns. It's about 7 acres. Well, what happened? Someone had the great idea that we're going to dock cruise ships at Mayport. And Mayport was originally a fishing and shrimping village, much like Fernandina. And just think of all the parking it would take to put a cruise ship there. I mean, you'd have to build a huge high-rise, and you can see the village. It's just a fishing village. Some of those homes have been there for well over 100 years. And of course, the people, they didn't really want a cruise ship. It would just be an iron curtain on their neighborhood. You couldn't see the river anymore because the big iron ship in the way, and all these tourists coming in and out in cars. So the city bought up all this property that had fishing and shrimping docks on it, and tore down all the docks, put in their cruise terminal, and then finally the citizens rose up and said, "Stop!" And they stopped. And they put the cruise ships on Blunt Island. So some of you may have been on the Carnival cruise ships that sails out of Blunt Island. And if you haven't been on it, you're going to be on it. When you're going out, be sure to look. You can see the lighthouse, and you'll see that it's a long way from the real mouth of the river because those jetties go way out now. But the city owns this 7 acres, and they own this warehouse right here. There's actually a group advocating for restoring that warehouse. It's about 125 years old. And they're looking at it, they're a nonprofit, and they're raising money and doing studies on how can we restore this warehouse. And we're thinking, well, that's going to mesh perfectly with us. We'll make it they want to make it a museum, and a lighthouse. And that's a perfect match. And there's a little house right here, kind of like an old-fashioned Jim Walter house, or even farther back, the kind of houses people order from Sears Roebuck. That's what this is. It's over 100 years old, and the city owns that. And this, you can see, this is the widest part right here.
Sweet spot.
That's where we'd like to put it, right there. And this old house could possibly be a gift shop, and then there could be a museum in the warehouse. And there were shrimp boats here when this photo was made, but that's not a shrimp boat dock anymore. That's where Osurge docks their big shark research ship. We were out there in our boat about a month ago, and Osurge was in port, and we saw their big boat tied up there. Osurge is, like I said, they're building a big campus. They're going to put a big, nice campus here. It's going to have dorms and places on the waterfront. And what about the rest of it? Well, there's another group at Mayport. They call themselves the Mayport Waterfront Partnership. And we're real big partners with them too. And they've been given the charge from the city of Jacksonville to put the fishing and shrimp boat docks back. So what they're working on, and the city's actually funded money for their project. They've got, I think it's WWEA Construction out of Jacksonville that's probably going to get the contract, and they're going to build commercial fishing docks right here. It's going to go all along right in here. There'll be parking here, of course, but there's also going to be stores. There's going to be a place possibly that the fishermen, when they come into port, could rent a room for the night, clean up, and get off the sea for a few nights while they're in port. They're going to have walkways. And there's going to be a recreational dock right along in here, so recreational people can pull their boats up. There's a wonderful boat ramp at Mayport, but there's not any real dock. The dock there is like for you to tie up while you park your truck and get in your boat and go. There's nowhere you can just tie up and get out and walk around. There's going to be recreational docks along in here, so it will be possible for people to pull up in their boat, come over here and see the lighthouse, come over here and see the museum. Probably Osurge is going to have some public access to show the things that they do. You can go in and see about the shark research that they're doing. Walking trails. It's just really that we've got Osurge, we've got the lighthouse, we've got the redevelopment of the riverfront. It just all seems like if we can just pull it off, it's all going to mesh and be a wonderful project. And we were here earlier this week for the National Registry of Historic Places. They've had a meeting going on all week here. And we went down to their meeting, and they put out a list each year called 11 to Save. And we applied last year and never heard back from them. But we weren't really going that good last year. But this year, we've already got grant money. We've got approval from the Navy, got approval from the city. So we put our name in again to see if we could get on their 11 to Save list. And Cindy and I went to their announcement Tuesday, and we're on the list. And after we left here, we said, let's go through, we live in St. Augustine, let's go through Mayport on the way. So we went down A1A and rode the ferry. And if you get on the ferry from the North Bank, when you park your car and look, it is straight ahead, 12 o'clock. That's exactly where the lighthouse is gonna go. So what's gonna happen, people will get on that ferry and it's gonna head out into the river, aiming straight at the lighthouse, and then it goes left because the other side is down the river a little bit. And then when they get off, you can't go that way because it's the Navy base. When you go that way, there's a lighthouse. Well, hey, let's stop and see the lighthouse. Here we are. This is the First Presbyterian of Fernandino on Tuesday when they announced that we were going to be on the list. These are the 11 that they're saving. There's one in Apalachicola, Gainesville, Cedar Key. You can see there some around the state. There's one in Volano. There's 2 in Duval County.
The Magic Hotel in Bologna.
The Magic Hotel in Volano Beach, if anyone's familiar with that. It's an old 1950s hotel. It's like the last one on the ocean in St. Johns County. And they've actually got a 501c that's trying to save it because it's the last one of the old hotels. So how can you help? Well, when we put our organization back together, one of the first things we did is we set up a Facebook presence so people can start following us. So if you're on Facebook, you go look for Mayport Lighthouse Association. You can find us there. Try to help us raise awareness when you talk to people. Let them know that there's a lighthouse in Mayport. There's some people trying to save it. Writing letters of support to our elected officials. We got some good support from Congressman Rutherford. We actually had Senator Rubio on our side too. We had some of his staff were working with us, but then he got the job of Secretary of State. So we haven't gotten a relationship with the new senator yet. But we also need to start making some better connections with our state senator and state representative. So we got the Congress on board, we got the city council on board. We've got to get more people in the boat. You can become a member of the Mayport Lighthouse Association. You can find us at mayportlighthouseassociation.org, and you can go there and fill out the membership form, and you can pay by PayPal or send us a check, whichever you like. And you can donate to be a member, $35. You can be an individual member for $35. We have a fundraising campaign going. I told you we gave one of our coins to the commander at the base. I'll pass this around so you can take a look at it. That fundraising campaign is, if you give $120, you get one of the coins.
Makes a great gift.
Yeah, it makes it great. It does, and especially if you know somebody that was in the military, because it's a bigger thing to them, you know. If you're a businessman for 40 years like me, and I didn't know what that was, but my daughter's has career Air Force, and she's got a wall, and she's got them all lined up. So it's a big thing for them. The Florida Lighthouse Association, I told you about, they have the lighthouse that you put on your car. When you renew your tag, for an extra $25, you can put the tag on your car that says visit our lights, and know that the $25 that you're paying extra, it goes strictly for bricks and mortar for fixing lighthouses. There's no administration, there's no PR advertising, and every dollar you give goes direct to that. And we've got some information that we would like to share with each of you. Valerie's going to pass out. We've got information on buying the tag that you can put on your car. We've got some postcards of we got a postcard of the 2 lighthouses and the light ship. We've got a sticker we hope that you'll put on your car as well. And what we'd like you to do now, this is what it looked like when it was restored in 1980. We want it to look like that again. But we want the door out of the ground so you can go in it. Yeah,
Are you gonna dig the 9 feet down and
Yeah.
dig it all?
yeah,
Oh my gosh.
yeah, it sits on, it sits
No,
on
no, I
a,
know, but
it sits on a very thick foundation, and I thought they'd dig the whole foundation up with hydraulic jacks. They go under it with, they have a saw, they cut the foundation, they cut right through it all the way across. And then they get, somehow they get hydraulic jacks under it and they lift it up. And you have to lift it slow, because if it tips, it's got to be perfect. And once they get it up, they got to put it on rails with wheels and tracks, and then it's got to be moved. Actually, hooking it to a truck and moving it can probably be done the same day. It's the getting it out of the ground, getting it on wheels, getting all the sensors in place, getting the new foundation poured, getting piles sunk in the ground. They may tell us we have to put piles 5 feet down. They tell us we have to put piles 40 feet down. We just don't know. We hope we'll know that soon when the study is done. This is a picture looking down. This is a picture looking down from the lighthouse. Someone who actually got a chance to climb the lighthouse made this picture. You could see the Presbyterian churches across the street. You could tell it doesn't seem all that high. Of course, it's 9 feet underground. It'll be higher. When we put it on its new spot, it'll be higher because it won't be underground. That's what the granite, it's got granite steps all the way. It's got 90 granite steps from the bottom to the top. This is one of our members, Nadine Peacock. She was fortunate to be able to climb it. It's been many years ago, but she's one of the few that got to climb up it. And that's what I've got for you. Do you have any questions for us? Any questions?
In this perfect world, how much money do you need to get paid? And how long would it take in a perfect world? What would you say to that?
I believe the National Park Service largely funded moving Hatteras. But we don't, we may get them on board. I think money in Washington is probably a lot tighter now than it was in previous years. But then we could get someone, we get Wayne Weaver or Shad Khan, the Jacksonville Mayor. They could pay for it out of their pocket. So we need to, when this study comes out next month, we'll put out a press release, and how many of the local media pick it up, I don't know, but it should be covered, and we'll say this is how much it's going to cost. But how long does it take getting it up out of the ground and on that? Probably, I'm no engineer, but that'd probably take a few weeks. And then as far as rolling, like I said, it'd probably do that one day. And we talked to the Department of Transportation, and they said you might want to do it at night when the ferry is closed anyway. That way you won't even have to shut the ferry down.
And less traffic.
I hadn't thought of that. Other than the ferry there, it's a dead-end road. So if the ferry closes at 7:38, if you started moving it, you could start moving it during the day, and you wouldn't get to the spot until where the ferry is until 8 o'clock. And it could be, they believe it could be moved in one day. Once you get it to the new spot, how long does it take to set it down? I don't know. Probably getting it out of ground's the biggest challenge. Yes.
Our beautiful lighthouse here was moved as well. It was moved from Cumberland Island, Georgia.
1839.
Yeah,
But
sorry.
it wasn't
But I think
moved
they
as a
took
single unit, they took it apart.
They took it.
Yeah.
Kind of hard to get it across.
Yeah.
Somebody floated the idea of cutting the Mayport Lighthouse in half. But the engineers we talked to at ICC Commonwealth, they said said you could do that if you had to, but if you can move it in one piece, we'd rather move it in one piece.
Is this a
So
single
there's-
wall construction? Our lighthouse here is a double wall. Is this a single wall?
I believe it's single wall, but I'm not positive. I believe it's single wall. I know what you mean, though. A lot of the lighthouses have a hollow in the middle. But this lighthouse is not as, the ones, some of those that are hollow are much bigger. Of course, your lighthouse is not all that big either, and it's a hollow wall, so. I'm not sure, but I believe it's single wall. How thick it is at the base, 6 feet, 8 feet, who knows?
We'll know soon.
Yeah.
Is the city of Mayport, are they helping you at all? The city?
The Mayport does, it's unincorporated. It's just, they call it, the locals call it Mayport Village. So it's not really an incorporated city. Some of the people that live in Mayport, their mailing address is Atlantic Beach. No, but it's not Atlantic Beach, it's Mayport, it's different.
It's a part of city of Jackson.
Yeah. Being unincorporated Duval County and Jacksonville being a consolidated county, it's Duval County. Sit.
There you go, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you could explain what's in the packet and then the back of the
Okay, what-
page where it shows the membership.
But for $120, you can have one of these in a nice case. In your packet, you got one of these, BABI. It tells you about putting the Visit Our Lights tag on your car. You can put it on your camper, your boat trailer, put one on whatever you want to put it on. But every time you put one on your car, $25 goes to Lighthouse Restoration. Got a sticker for you to put up on your window or on your car, help us get the word out. People will ask, what is MLA? Then you've got a story to tell. And we have a postcard for you that's got the St. John's River Lighthouse on it. There's a postcard with the light ship. And we've got our brochure that tells you about becoming a member of the Mayport Lighthouse Association. It's got a QR code on the back. You just scan that and you can pay on your phone. And we've got some information from the Florida Lighthouse Association. Here's more about the Florida Lighthouse Association and the tag. And this is a map of the 30 remaining Florida lighthouses. So you can make a bucket list and go see the Florida lighthouses. You're in a great place to start. Start at Amelia, go right down the coast, and go all the way around till you get to Pensacola. Any questions? Any more questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.